7. Dan Hardy 22-6 beat Marcus Davis 21-6 by a decision on scores of 29-28, 28-29 and 29-28. I had it 30-27 for Hardy, although rounds 1 and 2 were both close enough that even the judge voting for Davis had an arguable card. Our poll had it 67% for Hardy and 26% for Davis and 7% even. This was a good fight that was competitive, but didn't live up the hype nobody in the US saw. Hardy had been calling Davis a fake Irishman, and the build-up that wasn't on the US Countdown show was awesome. Hardy was playing total heel to the US and babyface for the UK. Davis took it way too seriously, and let the hype become real. You could tell from his corner how bad he wanted to win, so he tried to turn it into a wrestling match, figuring it was safer there since it's Hardy weakness. Davis took him down and did some ground and pound. When Hardy got up, he hurt Davis with punches, cutting him high on the forehead. In the second round, Hardy was on top most of the ground until the ref called for a stand-up. I thought that was a bad call because Hardy was active and throwing on the ground. Davis hit a strong shot and then took Hardy down, and did some late damage. Davis got a knockdown to start the third round and did damage on the ground. He went for an ankle lock and then a heel hook, but in doing so, lost position. Hardy got up and took Davis down. Hardy hurt him, cutting him on the bridge of the nose and near the left eye, and the left side of his forehead ended up being swollen badly. After a stand-up call, you could see the blood going into Davis' eyes and it was affecting his vision. It was enough that it could have been called, but Davis went the distance. Hardy then said how he said a lot of things to build the fight, but that Davis is a good fighter and fans should support him. That UFC post-fight sportsmanship after a grudge match build-up only serves to make people think they've been hoodwinked by a fake storyline. If fighters want to have a character, they shouldn't have it before the fight and then do a 180 after the fight. 8. Spencer Fisher, 24-4, beat Uno 25-12-4 by scores of 29-28 across the board. I had it 29-28 for Uno. Our poll had it 61% for Uno, 29% for Fisher, and 10% even. Crowd didn't like the fight, since it was mostly wrestling. It was the kind of a fight where I enjoyed it, but it was apparent most wouldn't. Joe Rogan, when fans booed, started talking about the meathead element. Slow first round with Fisher mostly blocking Uno's takedown attempts, having better stand-up, and even getting Uno's back late. He won the first. Second round was close. Good grappling that the fans didn't get into. Lots of takedowns and reversals. Uno got one takedown, and was on his back after the other attempts, all instigated by him, but he always reversed. I gave the round to Uno. Third saw Fisher dominate the first 4 minutes, but Uno got a takedown and did more damage in the last minute than Fisher did in the prior 4. 9. Mike Swick 14-2, beat Ben Saunders 7-1-2 by a ref stoppage at 3:06 of the second round. This fight was a disappointment as it looked good on paper, but in reality, Swick was a level above. Saunders is huge for a welterweight. He made 170, but in the cage looked to be 6'3" and 195, far bigger than Swick, who was probably just under 180. Saunders pulled guard and just held on. Little happened other than trash talk. After a few minutes of nothing happening, Swick said, "Are you going to just hold me all night?" Saunders came back with "Stand up, bitch," which wouldn't have been easy with Saunders holding on so tight. Finally the ref ordered a stand-up and Swick got the better of an exchange. Second round saw Swick connect with a flurry of punches, with a right to the temple putting Saunders down and hurting him. After a few more punches on the ground, ref Leon Roberts stopped it. The last minute or so was good, but it wasn't much until then. Swick issued challenges to Georges St. Pierre, Matt Hughes, and Thiago Alves. Swick got a $60,000 bonus for best knockout. 10. Mirko Cro Cop, 25-6-2 beat Mostafa Al-Turk 6-5 in 3:06. Not really much to it other than Cro Cop throwing Al-Turk off like he had scary shoulder power when Al-Turk tried wrestling. Cro Cop had a knockdown and seemed on the verge of winning when the accidental eye poke happened. Not much of a fight. 11. Cain Velasquez 6-0 beat Czech Congo 24-5-1 by a decision with scores 30-27 across the board. It was an obvious score, and if anything, Velasquez could have easily gotten some 10-As. But I think even though he dominated, he never had Congo on the verge of being finished, which is usually where you'll get the 10s. Congo nailed Velasquez at the start with 2 hard punches that would have finished most people. Velasquez was knocked to a knee, barely phased, and took Congo down. Velasquez dominated the rest of the round, with punches, getting Congo's back. slammed him a few times and basically just beat him up in the first round. Second round saw Congo deck Velasquez again, who recovered and immediately took him down again. He bloodied Congo's nose and beat him up the entire round. It was hilarious as Congo's corner was telling him Velasquez was getting tired, while Velasquez was walking around like he couldn't wait for the rest period to end. Congo hurt him again with punches early in the round. Velasquez got the takedown and was mauling him. Congo got up and started teeing off on Velasquez, but Velasquez again took him down and beat on him. 12. Rich Franklin, 27-4, won no contest, beat Vanderlei Silva, 32-10-1, on scores of 30-27, 29-28 and 30-27. I had it 29-28. Our poll was close here, with 49% for Franklin, 38% for Silva and 14% had it even. They were fighting at a 195-pound catchweight, as Franklin is moving up to 205 and Silva down to 185. Match was on the ground with each having time on top. Franklin did more damage. Silva didn't rush in and throw wildly, but the slower pacing benefited Franklin. Silva looked like he was turning at the end of the round. Second round finally delivered on what people wanted to see. Franklin mostly picked Silva apart standing, with a tired Silva still throwing wildly back. Late in the round, Silva clocked Franklin and had him in trouble. Franklin got out of trouble and threw a kick that put Silva down to one knee late. Without that kick it would have been Silva's round. Third round was close. Silva was exhausted, but he still threw hard and connected with better punches. Franklin didn't take advantage of Silva being tired. Franklin got takedown with 30 seconds left, but Silva got up. With Franklin behind him, he started throwing backward elbows and I gave Silva the round. Both men got a $60,000 bonus for best fight. I'd say overall the fight was very good. It was about what most would have hoped it would be. Maureen and Paul Toffoloni, the parents of Nancy Benoit, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Dr. Phil Aston III and a series of unnamed defendants listed as Distributor X, Distributor Y and Distributor Z, theoretically drug suppliers or manufacturers, regarding the deaths of Nancy and Daniel Benoit. There had always been talk of filing suit against WWE, which does have money, but evidently the feeling was they could not tie the company into the crime. Aston, serving a 10-year prison sentence, is financially destitute, but there may be hopes of getting a recovery from his insurance company. The suit was filed on June 10 in U.S. District Court in Noonan, Georgia. The unnamed defendants, which are hoped to be revealed during further investigation, the 2-year statute of limitations on filing the suit would have expired in a few weeks, were listed as manufacturers, distributors, wholesalers and/or retail sellers of anabolic steroids, narcotics and other controlled substances. The lawsuit accuses the unnamed defendants of selling steroids, prescription drugs and other controlled substances to Chris Benoit without a legitimate prescription. The main claims of the lawsuit are that Aston prescribed steroids, painkillers and muscle relaxers to Chris Benoit from 2000 to 2007, and that as part of prescribing those drugs, Aston had a responsibility to both monitor Chris Benoit, but also warn him of potential side effects from taking those drugs. It claimed Benoit committed murders while under the influence of depressants, opiates and steroids, which had been steadily supplied to him by Aston between June 7, 2000 and June 22, 2007, the day before it is alleged that Benoit killed Nancy. It claimed Aston failed to properly diagnose, monitor or treat side effects of the drugs he was prescribing. It also alleged Aston never properly informed Benoit of the potentially dangerous and lethal interactions of taking those drugs at the same time. The claim is the combination of the effects of these drugs caused Benoit's mental and emotional state to deteriorate and led to the crimes. The Toffoloni family from the start had believed in the drug cocktail theory behind the deaths, as opposed to Chris Benoit's father Michael, who believed the behavior was the result of the numerous concussions that Benoit suffered while working as a pro wrestler, and had completely dismissed the drug use, particularly the steroids, from the equation. It is more logical that both had effects, because depressants can lead to depression, steroids can result in mood swings and depression, and repeated concussions also lead to depression. The combination of all three could very well have a synergistic effect which medical science has never studied potential effects of. By not going after concussions as even part of the cause of Chris Benoit's mental deterioration, it made it difficult to impossible to go after WWE. The Michael Benoit version would in theory make the WWE more likely to be listed as a defendant. Michael Benoit would have until about June 23 to actually file a lawsuit where the statute of limitations in the case would expire. He is being represented by Carrie Eiter, the Atlanta lawyer who successfully got settlements from both WCW and TNA on racial discrimination issues. The lawsuit asks for damages of the full value of the lives of Daniel and Nancy Benoit, compensatory damage for the trauma, pain, suffering, and fear of both Daniel and Nancy as they were being murdered, as well as funeral costs. The lawsuit also contained an affidavit from Dr. Gary Wadler, a well-known medical community opponent of steroids, who is hated by the pro-steroid community. Wadler wrote, "It is my opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty and medical probability that Aston was negligent in his care and treatment of Chris Benoit." He wrote that such negligence caused Benoit's mental, physical, emotional and/or behavior health to deteriorate to the extent he suffered from one or more psychoses, which led to extreme behavior such that he killed his wife Nancy and son Daniel, and shortly thereafter, committed suicide. He also stated that if Aston had not been negligent in his dispensing of those drugs, that Benoit's mental and emotional state would not have deteriorated to the point where he would have committed the crimes. That is going to make Wadler even more hated in those circles because he came out with a statement specifically blaming the drugs for Benoit's crimes, as opposed to saying it is possible they could be one of many contributing causes. The lawsuit also included a letter written to Fayette County deputies the day after the bodies were found in the house by Aston, regarding Chris's last visit. "I have been Chris and Nancy Benoit's personal physician and friend for approximately seven years. Chris Benoit was seen in our office on Friday, June 22, 2007. He was here from approximately 12:30 p.m. to about 1:45 p.m. He was seen on a routine checkup which he has seen in 2 to 3 month intervals. He had no outstanding complaints other than his usual pain and muscular spasms. He did state he wanted to restart an antidepressant, Zoloft, which he had taken in the past. On further history he stated he was mildly depressed, mostly secondary to his travel schedule. He was given a prescription for Zoloft 50 mg. 1 per day, the usual dose and the same dose he had used in the past. Chris did not appear outwardly depressed nor anxious. He did state Nancy had been very moody lately and he asked about premenopausal and hormonal changes in women her age. I explained about hormonal changes, menopause, and mood swings to Chris. He asked me to see her professionally after the upcoming July 4th holiday. I agreed to see her and agreed not to mention our conversation or his conversation to her. Chris stayed at our office conversing with my staff as he usually does during his visits. He signed a few autographs for some patients and left approximately 1:45 p.m. He did not appear distressed, anxious, nor even depressed at the time he was in the office. I told Chris as a friend I would call Nancy if he desired, but he stated I could see her later. I hope this helps in the investigation of this tragic incident involving a great athlete and a good person. Amidst all kinds of issues with the local commission, Triple_A's biggest event of the year, the 17th annual Triple Mania, took place on June 13 at the Palacio de los Deportes in Mexico City before 15,500 fans. While a healthy crowd, the feeling was coming just 2 weeks from WWE playing the same arena, at high ticket prices, and selling out, that it was too quick, even in the hottest wrestling market in the world, to come back with a big show. This had to be a disappointment because they were very happy with the advance, and projected that it would do a sellout from it. CMLL also counter-programmed as the June 12th was promoted as the Children's Day special event, being made up for when the original Children's Day show on May 1st was cancelled due to the swine flu. They allowed kids in for the equivalent of 8 cents, and kids are part of Triple_A's prime audience. CMLL drew 9,500 fans on that show and then came back on June 14th, booking Arena Mexico again with all tickets $2, and drew another 8,000. The show failing to sell out, particularly after it had a good advance, was major talk throughout Mexico. The feeling is that when AAA goes all over Mexico, those are markets that don't get major loaded shows very often, and the excitement of TV stars coming to town is a big deal. But in Mexico City, where you've got maybe 4 WWE house shows, and between CMLL and IWRG, you've got 200 plus TV tapings per year in the area, the idea of AAA coming to town with a loaded up show, even Triple Mania, isn't as special. It was also the realization that unlike in CMLL, where the stars sell the tickets, in AAA, it is like WWE, where it's the brand name. The real evidence is that as over as Dr. Wagner Jr. and Leo Del Santo were on the show, they probably didn't help sell all that many extra tickets. Even a few years ago, there was the realization in AAA that their competition in the long run was not CMLL, as everyone thought, but WWE. And in the long run, Mexico is reminding me more and more of the United States, only about 23 years later. We went through the huge boom period from 2005 to 2008 where the market was flooded with big events and wrestling was huge on television. Wrestling is still big, But WWE has outdistances the local groups for popularity because it simply looks more major league and its stars on television come across as bigger stars. The idea that people will support the more traditional brand of wrestling because that's how it was for decades is just as true as the argument used by regional promoters who had run their markets for decades with a completely different style than WWE, and in most cases, a style that had proven successful. But the newer audience has no loyalty to an old style, and the cycle of wrestling fandom is really only a few years, so you have a great percentage of audience turnover and it takes far less time than most people realize. I think just now they are seeing the enormous potential of the competition, WWE, noted Vampiro. WWE is on everybody's minds down here because Mexico likes anything American. They are dominating television because people down here watch TV, and if you give them a soap opera, they won't move. AAA understands that unless they spend money and change the company, WWE will destroy them. He said a big problem is that management can see this, but the wrestlers, all of whom are too young and don't know American wrestling history, simply have no concept of how quickly things can change. The problem is the wrestlers just do not get it, and the current generation is so damaged that they will never learn. Hell will freeze over before anyone understands the logic, timing, and concept of teamwork. All of the talents are actually 1,000,000% believing this is for real. They are real. They are really supermen and famous TV stars. He noted that there is a lack of good teachers and no dressing room etiquette, and is scared about the drug use among the younger talent. The next day, Macias, Gilberto Cosme, 37, Billy Boy, Jose Islas, 33, and Ref El Hijo del Tirantes, Fernando Landa, 32, were arrested the day after a house show in Ciudad Juarez. According to the story that came out in a local newspaper, El Pueblo, the three wrestlers met up with 31-year-old gang member Fernando Cordova, and he was driving them around, and, according to Cordova, he got upset because the wrestlers were drinking and doing drugs in his car. When he yelled at them over it, they gave him a tremendous beating. The staff of the hotel Scenario, correct spelling, saw the fight and called police, who showed up quickly and broke it up. The wrestlers and Cordova were all taken in. Cordova complained because they were doing cocaine as he was driving him around, and when he did so, the three wrestlers beat him up. They were arrested and released on bond. As expected, the company is said to be furious about what happened, and the situation is expected to get more serious. Vampiro noted that Macias, Wagner Jr., himself and Conan understand what to do as far as performing, but all are physically beat up, and he noted he's 42 and has a broken neck. He noted, just as an example of how difficult the lifestyle is, that Macias got out of the arena for Triple Mania at 1 a.m., and had to wake up at 4:30 a.m. for a flight to do a double shot in the northern part of Mexico. Triple Mania was built around the domed cage match for Battle of Control of AAA, with Joaquin Roldan's team AAA of El Hijo del Santo in for one match, and the fact he didn't help sell out is not a good sign for him and Jack Evans in Octagon and La Parka and Vampiro versus Conan's Foreign Legion team of Chessman and Electroshock and Silver King and Teddy Hart and Kenzo Suzuki, only two members of which were foreign. Cian Caras was the guest referee. The finish saw Zorro come out, wearing his old mask, handing a kendo stick to Roldan, who hit Conan with it. While this was going on, the last two in the cage were Santo and Silver King, which had been built up in the press since back in 1987, when Silver King was only 19 years old. Santo beat him in a mask versus mask match, and Silver King kept talking about how he's not 19 anymore. It was interesting that Santo, who is at this point not scheduled to return, was the one who won the company back for the Pena family. Roldan's wife is Maricela Pena, Antonio's sister, and not Parka, the longtime most popular wrestler, or Octagon, the last major remaining original. 1. The Psycho Circus, Killer Clown and Psycho Clown and Zombie Clown, beat Arrow Star and Laredo Kid and Superfly to keep their winning streak alive. Arrow Star was injured doing a dive and taken out on a stretcher, so the heels had a 3-on-2 edge. What was weird was that in the TV build-up, Arrow Star had been teasing a turn on his partners, and instead, it played no factor in the match. Arrow Star came out with a mask that was half the design of his mask, and half the design of the late Abismo Negro's mask. They are claiming the Psycho Circus win streak at 350 matches, and after 19 months, it probably could be around 300. A shame to waste the streak angle, which has been historically effective in making stars, on a limited prelim act. Match was said to have sucked. 2. Billy Boy and Sexy Star and Mini Abismo Negro and Polvo de Estrellas, man, woman, mini and transvestite, beat El Ejito and Fabi Apache and Octagonchito and Pimpinela Escarlata. The finish saw Sexy Star distract referee Copetes, and while doing so, Billy Boy pulled off El Ejito's mask and got the pin with an inside cradle. Fabi Apache and sister Mari Apache then attacked Sexy Star, and tried to cut her hair until Billy Boy and Polvo de Estrellas managed to pull her to safety. Billy attacked Mari, and then Mari's father Gran Apache, and Billy's real-life father-in-law, since Billy is married to Fabi, made the save. Billy showed up without ring gear and was barely in during this match, which doesn't sound like a good sign. Also said to have sucked. They paused at this point to have a minute of applause for the memories of Mitsuharu Misawa, Antonio Pena, and Abismo Negro. 3. In a match where the losing captain gets 10 lashes with a kendo stick, another of the enduring legacy of an ECW angle with Sandman and Tommy Dreamer, it was the face team of Degeneration Mechs of Rocky Romero and X-Pac teaming with Charlie Manson to beat Dark Escoria and Dark Oz and Zorro. X-Pac pinned Zorro after 2 X-Factors. Manson hit Zorro 4 times with the kendo stick and was making fun of him. The heels, with Dark Cuervo doing a run-in, attacked Manson and stole the kendo stick, and the heels started giving the face team shots with the kendo stick until several faces ran in. Zorro started nailing Superfly, Laredo Kid and Pimpinela Escarlata with the kendo stick. This was also weak, but the show was to have picked up A for this match. Zorro was beating on Manson at ringside, right in front of Maricela Pena, who slapped Zorro. Zorro then calmly walked to the back. 4. In a 4-way hardcore match for the AAA Cruiserweight title, Extreme Tiger won the title over previous champ Alex Koslov, Alan Stone, and Crazy Boy. Koslov worked as a heel. It's been talked about to have the entire Degeneration Mechs group go heel. Koslov was eliminated first after being put through a table by Stone. Stone actually dove and put both Koslov and Extreme Tiger through the table, but went to pin Koslov. He then went to pin Tiger, but Tiger kicked out. Stone then started taunting Tiger, figuring him for dead, and Tiger cradled him. The finish saw Tiger do a 450 splash off a ladder onto Crazy Boy, who was on a table on the floor. Both men sold the move, but Tiger managed to roll into the ring, just beating the 20 count. Said to be a good weapons match. 5. Joe Líder and Nicho beat Marco Corleone and Latin Lover to retain the AAA Tag Team titles. Not sure what the story is here, but Lover and Corleone were at one point scheduled to win the title. Líder and Nicho worked the match wearing their belts early on. A lot of fans booed Latin Lover, so I guess it's his turn for a backlash. Not surprising, as the men aren't naturally going to have a love affair with a pretty boy type who is best known for being in stripper shows for women. Ref El Hijo del Tirantes kept favoring Líder and Nicho. Corleone threatened the ref and Líder attacked Corleone's knees from behind and Nicho pinned Corleone. Said to be a decent match. After this match they announced the AAA video game coming soon. 6. Dr. Wagner Jr. pinned Macias to win the AAA Super Mega Heavyweight title. I'm presuming that means Wagner Jr. signed his exclusive contract with AAA. Wagner Jr. was scheduled to win the title, but only if he signed. The main event was received by the crowd as a classic 35 minutes match, and the wrestlers were also raving about it. Tons of near falls with the crowd reacting like your big world title match of the year. Double juice, and in the end, Wagner Jr. pinned Macias after a second Michinoku driver. This match stole the show. AAA rarely does matches of this type in the sense it had the world title sports aura as opposed to feeling like a show. Wagner Jr. was cheered more than Macias, as has been the case throughout this feud, but neither man was booed. After the match they showed the trailer of the new AAA cartoon feature film release coming soon. 7. El Hijo del Santo and Jack Evans and Octagon and La Parca and Vampiro beat Chessman and Electroshock and Teddy Hart and Silver King and Kenzo Suzuki in an Escape the Domed Cage match with Cien Caras as referee. Silver King came out without his mask, but was wearing face paint in the design of his mask. Líder and Nicho were at ringside trying to keep the babyfaces from escaping the cage. Suzuki, Vampiro and Hart were out first. Evans came off the top of the cage with a crazy flying splash on Líder and Nicho, so he was out. Octagon came out. Conan hit Roldan and Caras with chair shots and Chessman got out, leaving Silver King at Electroshock versus Santo and Parca. Conan threw a fire extinguisher into the cage. Electroshock used it on Santo and escaped. That's when Zorro came out and gave Roldan the kendo stick and he hit Conan over the head with it, and Parca climbed out. This left Santo and Silver King as the final two, with Santo escaping the cage to win it. Ring of Honor airing its final pay-per-view show on June 12, followed by Dragon Gate USA announcing its own pay-per-view deal with G-Funk Entertainment, makes it appear G-Funk dropped ROH for Dragon Gate USA. In actuality, the timing was more of a coincidence. Dragon Gate USA will be doing bi-monthly pay-per-view shows, priced at $19.95, on-tape delay with a deal largely identical to the old ROH deal. The company's debut show on July 25 in Philadelphia will debut on September 4 and be also used to push the second show on September 6 in Chicago. That will air in November. Dragon Gate USA's plans to do 6 shows per year was part of the original marketing plan that included pay-per-view airings every other month. At first, the idea was that G-Funk would do the Dragon Gate pay-per-view shows in the month that ROH didn't. However, ROH made the decision to pull out of the pay-per-view market, at least for the present, after buy numbers had plummeted down to almost nothing for the recent shows. The pay-per-view deal means Dragon Gate USA is relying on pay-per-view to take precedence over DVD sales as a priority, because the contracts with the pay-per-view providers are that DVDs of the shows can't be released until 1 month after the pay-per-view debut date. Dragon Gate USA has in demand and several minor carriers cleared for the first show. They are still in negotiations with the Dish Network, while DirecTV turned down the deal, because DirecTV doesn't want to even deal with smaller pro wrestling pay-per-view events right now after agreeing to do the ROH shows, which was supposed to be a long-term deal, and then having ROH cancel, plus the weak numbers of the past few events. ROH pulled out of doing PPVs for a number of reasons. The company had a deal with Ken Gelman and G-Funk where they would split all pay-per-view revenues 50%. The hope was that by promoting the pay-per-view shows off HDNet that the numbers would increase, but instead, they dropped significantly. One of the major reasons they espouse for doing taped PPVs when the mentality of people buying pay-per-view is that it has to be a live hot event, was the idea it gave them some television exposure to make new fans. But that didn't work at all, as there were no increases in DVD sales or attendance figures after getting on pay-per-view. Really, there have been no increases since the HDNet deal came about either. The pulling out now is at least partially a timing issue. They've talked with HDNet regarding improving the pay-per-view situation. The only way to make a significant difference would be to go live, but the cost of doing so, in charging $29.95 per show instead of either the $9.95 or $14.95 the taped shows were getting, would mean they'd have to probably quadruple the average number of buys they were doing on taped shows to make it worth it. The ROH contract with G-Funk had a 6-month non-compete clause, so pulling out now at least gets the clock moving on the 6 months, which would end in mid-December. There is no deal in place, nor a guarantee of such a deal happening in December, but pulling out of this deal at this time was a combination of the recent shows not bringing in significant money, and getting through the time frame to try and improve the pay-per-view situation. ROH had been steadily doing 5,000 to 10,000 buys on its bi-monthly shows until right around the last show of 2008, and since then numbers have dwindled down significantly. At least one show topped 10,000 buys, which, if you think about it, is tremendous when you look at the comparisons. WWE, with all its television and going live, was down to 118,000 domestic for Backlash, the last event reported. TNA, with bigger stars, 2 hours of national prime time and going live, has had recent shows with unattractive main events fall under 20,000, although most shows do beat that figure. But even though ROH has never done a bad pay-per-view show, they had been unable to maintain the audience even if they would say they liked the last show. The only lure was apparently hype going in that you would see a match of the year, because they had no TV to develop storylines and didn't have stars. Without that level of match on the shows, plus if you wanted great matches, WWE PPVs of late have produced generally great main events with bigger stars. ROH didn't have its niche. Dragon Gate is going to be all about putting on those type of main events on every show. The problem is all the top stars are Japanese, and they are not even over to even the hardcores as distinguishable stars as much as a group of interchangeable guys who fly around and deliver great matches. Gabe Sapolsky said that they recognize their limitations as to the audience they are going to be able to reach with a Japanese product and no television, but the idea is to just satisfy that audience. They recognize being on pay-per-view isn't going to make them new fans, but expenses of doing a tape show that you are already going to produce a DVD of are not that high and they can be profitable on 5,000 buys. Austin Aries became the first two-time ROH champion on the June 13th show at the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York, winning a three-way over former champion Jerry Lynn and Tyler Black in the main event of a show that garnered more publicity due to a backstage confrontation between Ric Flair and owner Kerry Silken. Flair was originally advertised to referee the Lynn vs. Aries title match, with the idea of Flair counting the pin and raising the hand of Aries to end the match. When Flair went back to WWE, which didn't want him in ROH in the first place, he, besides pulling off doing television, wanted to limit his involvement to the 4 remaining shows he had agreed to do and been paid in advance to do. Flair is said to have returned $41,000 of his advance money because he could no longer do the TV shows that he had previously agreed to do. During the week, a compromise was reached where the Lynn vs. Aries match would have an ROH referee, but Flair would be the second referee outside the ring, and one would figure, at least work in a spot. Relations between the sides were frayed over Flair arriving at the most recent TV tapings and saying he could no longer do television, causing them to have to rewrite the shows just a couple of hours before the first taping was to start. It wasn't as bad a process as it could have been because when Flair showed up on WWE television, there was a recognition they wouldn't want him on ROH TV, so he was written into the shows in a manner that it wouldn't be a catastrophe to take him out. When Flair arrived, he was told that they wanted a verbal confrontation as an angle between himself and Aries early in the show, which would build to a spot, believed to be involving Flair using a figure 4 on Aries. Flair wasn't hot on the idea of how the angle was laid out, but when he found out the show was being taped by HDNet and not just for DVD release, he said he couldn't appear as any kind of a participant on something filmed by HDNet. HDNet was filming because they wanted clips of the title change on television. The situation got very heated between Flair and Silken. The wrestlers saw it as Flair refusing to do anything he had agreed to do, not understanding the key to the impasse was HDNet taping. While Flair is not under contract to WWE, and legally they couldn't stop him from appearing on HDNet, they've made it very clear they don't want someone on their television appearing on any other wrestling television product. Flair has been paid in advance and is still booked for house shows on June 26th in Detroit, June 27th in Chicago and July 25th in Toronto, to do an autograph session and cut a promo in the ring. ROH is hopeful he would appear as advertised, but the situation is not the best right now. The Toronto show would be his final date with the company as there is no talk of future dates. Apparently, as the backstage argument heated up, Booker Adam Pearce had them play Flair's music for his promo, which he counted on Flair, as a professional, to drop the argument and go out to perform. Flair joked to Pearce to watch this, and cut a promo, lavishly praising the company, the product and the fans. Flair had come out earlier in the show as part of a 10-bell salute to start the show for Mitsuharu Misawa. After cutting the promo, Flair left the building and flew home. While ROH officials were aware by that point that Flair was going to leave after doing the promo, the wrestlers weren't, and thought Flair had walked out on the show before his role in the main event, and many were furious. The show drew about 1,450 fans, a little up from the previous show in the arena. The next show was announced for September 26th, but at the Manhattan Center in the same complex, the smaller 1,200-seat building that Raw was taped in when it first started. Bret Hart was announced for the show. The reason for the move to the smaller building was that they had booked several dates with another act that wanted the Hammerstein for September 26th as part of the run. ROH was given a really sweet deal for one night to move to the smaller arena. Nevertheless, because the smaller arena is also significantly less expensive to run, it may turn out to be more cost-effective in the long term unless ROH can get crowds up to more than 1,500 or so. Earlier in the show, a scheduled Jimmy Jacobs vs. Black match ended before it started. It was scheduled as a first blood match, and before the bout started, Jacobs used a spike to Black's head and he bled. When the bell rang to start the match, the ref saw the blood and had no choice but to immediately stop it. Black was destroying Jacobs, and also threw down 3 referees who tried to calm him down. He said he came to New York looking for redemption and said if Silken had any guts, he'd let him wrestle later in the show in the title match. Aries came out at the start of the main event, to Flair's music, to get heat, and said that due to circumstances beyond the control of ROH, Flair would not be the special referee in the title match, so there wouldn't be one. At that point, Nigel McGuinness came out and said he would be the special ringside enforcer. There was no negative reaction to Flair not being involved in the main event. Black was put in and it was made a 3-way. Black pinned Lynn with God's last gift to win the first fall. Crowd wasn't that into the early part of the match, but popped big when Lynn was pinned. The idea of the Lynn title reign was to build around Lynn as the embodiment of Randy the Ram from The Wrestler, but in this case the older guy comes to win the title. But it didn't work as people didn't care about the connection. Aries vs. Black had great heat with Black, who had also beaten Lynn the night before in a non-title match in Manassas, Virginia, now in the old Japanese role of the young guy nipping at the top and people knowing he's going to get there, but having to wait to see it. After a ton of near falls, Aries pinned Black with a brainbuster to take the title. Sobe Entertainment, the company which has produced albums for both Brooke Hogan and her boyfriend Stax, has filed a $15 million lawsuit against Paul Big Show White, wife Bess White, and WWE over White returning to WWE in early 2008. backing out of a deal to become a pro boxer. The suit was filed on June 15 in Circuit Court for the 11th Judicial District in Miami-Dade County. After Show, now 37, retired from wrestling at the end of 2006 due to the accumulation of ring injuries, Sobe Entertainment, according to the suit, signed him to a 5-year contract from March 1, 2007 through February 27, 2012, where they would pay him $1,008,000 per year, where he would train for a career as a heavyweight boxer. They also agreed to advance him $1 million for business-related expenses, most notably purchasing a house in Miami to live in while training, which is the home he and his wife currently live in. The contract with the organization was primarily for boxing, but also included being exclusive to them a performer, an entertainer, an actor, a pro wrestler, or being involved as an athlete or a celebrity. Sobe's end also included all training expenses, business-related travel, hotel, cars, and legal expenses. The suit claimed contract included that White and his wife were to take over a second mortgage, and he breached the contract by failing to do so, and instead it claims he used the collateral of the home for a line of credit to reduce the tax lien, as the IRS claimed he owed them $405,068.55 in back taxes. Because of his size, boxing promoters had been after White to come in as an attraction, with the idea his size would make him a difficult opponent in the heavyweight division, dating back to his original stardom in WCW. But White was under contract to WCW, and then signed a 10-year contract with a $950,000 downside guarantee with WWE in early 1999, when Vince McMahon believed he could market him to be the next Andre the Giant. Of course, having Steve Austin pin him right away on television was a curious move. McMahon had always told people that WCW didn't book White correctly, saying he should rarely appear on television and be used as an attraction, similar to how his father booked Andre. However, once McMahon signed him, he booked him exactly the opposite of how he had told people for years he would book him. At times, he was considered a major underachiever, and was criticized for bad training habits contributing to his weight, which at times surpassed 500 pounds. He was even sent to OVW and told he would be brought up when his weight got below 400 pounds, although McMahon eventually tired of spending that much money on someone in developmental, and he was brought back when he wasn't anywhere close to shooting distance of the weight. At one point during the run, his contract was renegotiated at WWE's insistence to an 8-year deal, but he still earned in the $1 million per year range as a downside on, likely earned significantly more than that some years as a headliner. The Sobe marketing plan for White was for him to spend a year training to box as well as to get in condition and start fighting, where his friend, Hulk Hogan, would be his manager. The feeling was the combination of Hogan doing interviews with him would garner attention for his fights. Things fell apart for a number of reasons. The first was that White himself realized he was simply too old to learn to box. He had told friends in late 2007, when he secretly agreed to return to WWE several months later, that they could line up some stiffs and he could knock them out, but he couldn't keep up with real heavyweight boxers. The other is the Hogan as manager thing seemed to be falling apart, as Show was aware of Hogan's marriage falling apart long before it became public, and that Hogan wouldn't have the time to be his manager, which was considered a key part of the marketing plan. Sobe would have been involved in some form with Hogan and Eric Bischoff's plan to start a promotion where Hogan vs. White would have been the main program. After a show in Memphis, which drew poorly, the idea fell through with the realization they couldn't run a profitable house show tour in the United States. The lawsuit claimed White breached his contract by refusing to adhere to the terms starting on November 4, 2007, likely about the time he made the deal to return with Vince McMahon, and claimed WWE tortuously interfered with their existing contract. The lawsuit claimed that White, wife Bess, and Hulk Hogan came to Sobe's CEO, Cecile Barker, with the marketing concept of getting people to finance White going into pro boxing. He said that if they hired him and paid for his training, he'd sign a 5-year exclusive deal with them. When White quit and then signed his contract with WWE, Sobe asked him to return the $2 million they had spent on his salary and the home, and he has refused to pay them back. A funny part of the lawsuit is that Sobe tries to tie in their training him for boxing and the Floyd Mayweather vs. Big Show match at WrestleMania last year. In the lawsuit, Sobe actually believed Mayweather earned $20 million for the match. The lawsuit also claims Sobe had sent WWE a letter in March claiming they had interfered in the existing contractual relationship and asked that Show not perform at WrestleMania. Clearly, with the letter being sent 2 days before the show with all the promotional work and advertising done, Sobe had to be looking for a check to go away, because they waited for the last minute to do so. But they are using that letter as evidence they had informed WWE in March of the contract. They noted they believed WWE knew White had been training as a boxer. It had been reported, and White also showed up at a WWE Live event, the Survivor Series, on November 18, 2007 at the American Airlines Arena in Miami, and talked with WWE personnel at the time. At the time, he did not inform anyone that we are aware of that he would be returning, although he had struck at least a verbal deal with Vince McMahon and John Laurinaitis, and it was to be kept secret, so his return would be a surprise by that time. The lawsuit stated WWE sent a second letter on April 2, 2009, a few days before this year's WrestleMania, again citing that White had breached his contract and they believed WWE had interfered with their contract, stating they should pull him off the show. Famous boxers serving stints as referees in pro wrestling goes back to the beginning of time. Many boxing legends like Jack Dempsey, Rocky Marciano, Jack Sharkey, Ezzard Charles, Jess Willard, James Braddock, the 1930s heavyweight champion who the movie Cinderella Man was based on, Joe Frazier, Jersey Joe Walcott, Joe Louis, Archie Moore, and numerous others served as referees in pro wrestling matches. And most of them at one point or another actually did matches. Of that list, most actually also participated in matches in pro wrestling at one point or another. Even Jack Johnson did pro wrestling in France during a period he was exiled from boxing. Marciano didn't, although Dempsey's match with Cowboy Luttrell on a pro wrestling card was actually a shoot under boxing rules. With the change in the business, using a boxer as a referee inside the ring itself has been done on rare occasions in recent years, but many would credit the usage of Mike Tyson, at a price tag of $3.5 million, at the 1998 WrestleMania and the Steve Austin vs. Shawn Michaels match as being a huge factor in both the momentum of the Monday Night Wars and breaking Austin out as a star outside the wrestling world. Tyson, far more than Austin or Michaels, was the big draw on that show, which saw WrestleMania go from an all-time low 237,000 buys in 1997 to an all-time high of 730,000 buys in 1998. In hindsight, that was the show that put WrestleMania on the map for good, because it had not really done monster pay-per-view numbers since 1989, but since that point, it did monster numbers most years since and never fell even close to the levels of 1991-97 again. Muhammad Ali as referee for the main event of the first WrestleMania, although like Tyson, he was actually outside the ring until jumping in to do the final count as Pat Patterson refereed the main event to make sure to give instructions to Mr. T as the match was ongoing, was also a major part of the build-up of the show, although from a marketing standpoint, his role regarding the success of the show was nowhere near as important as the role of Tyson. The latest name to add to a lengthy list is Felix Tito Trinidad, who will referee the Rey Gonzalez vs. La Pesadilla, Orlando Colon, the cousin of Carlito and Primo, match on July 11 at the 13,000-seat Ruben Rodriguez Coliseum in Bayamon, on a show that also includes the Colon brothers defending the WWE Tag Team titles against Thunder and Lightning, the longtime top tag team in Puerto Rico. Umaga vs. MVP and several unnamed WWE divas are also scheduled to appear. Umaga was booked through WWE, and how his leaving the organization affects this booking is unclear. Over the years, both WWC and IWA have tried to get Trinidad, the biggest sports hero in Puerto Rico, to work as a referee on their shows. Now, with his career perhaps over, he hasn't won a fight in almost 5 years and has only fought once, a loss to Roy Jones Jr. on January 19, 2008, in Madison Square Garden. In the last 4, he's finally agreed to do so. Trinidad, who has a 42-3 record as a boxer. He captured his first world championship, the IBF welterweight title, beating Maurice Blocker in San Diego, at the age of 20 on June 19, 1993. He retained that title 15 times, leading to winning the WBC welterweight title on a majority decision from Oscar de la Hoya on September 18, 1999, in Las Vegas, in what is still the second most purchased pay-per-view event in history, behind de la Hoya vs. Floyd Mayweather, among non-heavyweights, doing 1.5 million buys. He also won the WBA Super Welterweight title on March 3, 2000, from David Reed in Las Vegas, the IBF Junior Middleweight title from Fernando Vargas on December 2, 2000, in Las Vegas, and the WBA Middleweight title from William Joppy on May 12, 2001, in Madison Square Garden. Trinidad's first career loss wasn't until September 29, 2001, when he lost to Bernard Hopkins in Madison Square Garden, where he lost his WBA middleweight title in a triple middleweight title match. Hopkins held the WBC and IBF versions. After knocking out Hassan Cherifi on May 11, 2002, in San Juan, he retired with a 41-1 record. He did 3 matches since that point, a win over Ricardo Mayorga, and losses to Winky Wright and Jones Jr. Koji Kanemoto captured the 20th annual Best of the Super Junior tournament in New Japan on June 14 at Korakuen Hall, by beating Ireland's Prince Devitt, Virgil Devitt, in 1955 with an ankle-lock submission. It was the 8th time Kanemoto, now 42, had reached the finals, winning previously in 1998 and 2002, while losing in the finals in 1997, 1999, 2003, 2004 and 2008. Devitt had never been in the finals previously. The show drew a sellout 2005 fans. It was the usual parody-style tournament booking with 8 of the 14 wrestlers still alive going into the final night of the round-robin tournament on June 13 in Kyoto. Devitt finished the tournament beating Akira on June 12 in Toyohashi, with a 4-2 record, and with nobody else with a better record, he clinched at least a tie for the A block, with Tiger Mask, Milano Collection ATE, and Atsushi Aoki still alive. In the B block, Kanemoto, Ryusuke Taguchi, Jushin Liger and Kota Ibushi were all still alive. Aoki, one of 2 representatives from Pro Wrestling Noah, with Tsuyoshi Kikuchi, clinched his spot in the final day by pinning Milano in 11-12. Then Black Tiger proved to be a spoiler, eliminating Tiger Mask. Tiger Mask, the current IWGP Junior Champion, spent most of the tournament in first place, but lost his last 2 matches to Jado and Black Tiger and finished with a 3-3 tournament record and out of the running. Generally speaking, these tournaments are used to create a top contender for the title, with the idea the champion is kept strong, often with the tournament winner also beating the champion during tournament play. But Tiger Mask and Kanemoto were in different blocks, and Tiger Mask didn't even make the final 4. The pin came in only 3:51 with a schoolboy. Ibushi from the DDT promotion pinned Liger in 16:35 to make it to the finals. Kanemoto then beat Taguchi with an ankle-lock submission in 17:11. Earlier on the June 14 Korakuen Hall show, Kanemoto beat Aoki in 6:27, with an ankle-lock in the semifinal. Aoki came in as a big sentimental favorite because of the Misawa news. Devitt pinned Ibushi of the DDT promotion in 8:14. The final standings were: a block, 1. Devitt and Aoki 4-2, 8 points, 3. Tiger Mask, Taguchi, Jado and Akira 3-3, 6 points, 7. Black Tiger 1-4, 2 points. B block, 1. Kanemoto and Ibushi 4-2, 8 points, 3. Taguchi Kikuchi Liger 3-3, 6 points, 6. Yamato and Taichi 2-4, 4 points. SmackDown on June 12 did a 1.8 rating. It actually beat ABC. The top-ranked show was the 7th game of the Stanley Cup playoffs on NBC that did a 4.3. TNA Impact on June 11 did a 1.06 rating and 1.6 million viewers. The show did a 0.79 in males 18-34 and 0.93 in males 35-49. In bad news, the highest quarter of the show, the Mick Foley and ring promo with Jeff Jarrett where he threatened to kick him out later in the show, was the high mark, doing a 1.18 rating. Alex Shelley and Jay Lethal vs. Team 3D lost 181,000 viewers, which is real bad because that was more than 10% of the viewers. Backstage with Jarrett and Foley, plus Samoa Joe vs. Scott Steiner in a First Blood match and Samoa Joe vs. Booker T in a First Blood match also lost 181,000 viewers. AJ Styles vs. Shane Douglas gained 136,000 viewers. Daphne beating up Taylor Wilde, Jeremy Borash interviewing the beautiful people and Cody Deaner training gained 15,000 viewers. Tara vs. Madison Rayne and Eric Young slapping Borash lost 45,000 viewers. The Kurt Angle vs. Sting main event gained 136,000 viewers to a 1.10. Superstars on June 11 did a 0.9 rating. Ultimate Fighter on June 10 did a disappointing 0.99 rating and 1.3 million viewers for the episode that had the semifinals of the lightweight tournament, determining who would face off on the live finals. The show did a 1.32 in males 18-34 and 1.00 in males 35-49, both well below usual levels. ECW on June 9 did a 1.2 rating and 1.6 million viewers, an increase over the past few weeks. The show did a 0.76 in males 18-49, with 70% males and an average viewer being 42. The Countdown to UFC 99 on June 9 did a 0.4 rating and 552,000 viewers. That's significantly down from most of the recent Countdown shows which air in better time slots. 11 p.m. Monday means right after highly rated Raw, even though on a different channel. 11 p.m. Thursday means right after so-so rated Impact on the same channel. 11 p.m. Tuesday means after so-so rated ECW on a different channel. In the segment-by-segment for the June 8 Raw, which did 5.40 million viewers on a 3.61 rating, Here's the rundown. Kofi Kingston vs. William Regal for the IC title lost 464,000 viewers, which is terrible for that point in the show. Maurice's title defense against Kelly gained 75,000 viewers. Goldust and Festus and Santino Marella vs. Chavo Guerrero and Brian Kendrick and Jamie Noble lost 45,000 viewers. The Miz promo and his non-match with John Cena with Big Show coming out gained 748,000 viewers, which is a great segment. MVP vs. Matt Hardy lost 75,000 viewers, which coming off big growth like that and in the 10:15 p.m. segment is actually excellent. The Vicky Guerrero farewell and Edge coming out gained 239,000 viewers in a segment that is usually a loser, and a 3.86 was the high full quarter of the show. Collins vs. Ted DiBiase and Cody Rhodes lost 209,000 viewers. The final segment with Orton supposed getting a shot at Batista and then Triple H returning gained 1,122,000 viewers to a 4.47 overrun, but they went so long that they got a lot of viewers expecting to see the show on next. 5 stars. This is the third and final issue of the current set. Because the first issue was a double issue, it means if you've got a 1 on your address label, your subscription expires with this issue. Renewal rates for the printed Observer in the United States are $11 for 4 issues, which includes $4 for postage and handling, $20 for 8, $28 for 12, $36 for 16, $54 for 24, $72 for 32, $90 for 40, $117 for 52 up through $144 for 64 issues. For Canada and Mexico, the rates are $12.50 for 4 issues, which includes $6 for postage and handling, $22 for 8, $32 for 12, $40 for 16, $60 for 24, $80 for 32, $100 for 40 issues, $130 for 52 and $160 for 64. For Europe, you can get the fastest delivery and best rates by sending to Moonsalt P.O. Box 3075, Barnet, Hearts EN49YR, England, or by sending email orders to moonsalt@mediaplusint.com. Rates are £9 per set of 4 issues. UK readers ordering at least 6 sets can get them for £8.50 per set. For the rest of the world, the rates are $14.50 for 4 issues, which includes $9 for postage and handling, $28 for 8, $40 for 12, $50 for 16, $63 for 20, $76 for 24, $87.50 for 28, $125 for 40 issues, and $162 for 52 issues. You can also get the Observer on the web at www.wrestlingobserver.com for $9.99 per month for a premium membership that includes daily audio updates, Figure 4 weekly, special articles, and a message board. If you are a premium member and still want hard copies of the Observer, you can get them for $7 per set in the US, $8 per set in Canada, and $10.50 per set for the rest of the world. All subscription renewals should be sent to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, P.O. Box 1228, Campbell, California 950091228. You can also renew via Visa or MasterCard by sending your name, address, phone number, Visa or MasterCard number and expiration date to dave@wrestlingobserver.com or by fax to 408-244-3402. You can also renew at www.paypal.com using dave@wrestlingobserver.com as the pay-to address. For all credit card or PayPal orders, please add a $1 processing fee. All letters to the editor, reports from live shows, and any other correspondence pertaining to this publication should also be sent to the above address. We also have copies of our latest book, Tributes to, a 293-page hardcover full-color book which features biographies right out of the pages of The Observer. Those featured are Wahoo McDaniel, Luthez, Miss Elizabeth, Freddie Blassie, Road Warrior Hawk, Andre the Giant, Kurt Hennig, Johnny Valentine, Davey Boy Smith, Terry Gordy, Owen Hart, Sue Hart, Gorilla Monsoon, The Sheik, and Tim Woods. The book is available for $12.95 plus $3.50 for postage and handling in the U.S., $10 for postage and handling in Canada, and $12 for postage and handling for the rest of the world. This publication is copyright material and no portion of The Observer may be reprinted without the expressed consent of publisher/writer Dave Meltzer or Deputy Managing Editor Scott Williams. Fax messages can be sent to The Observer 24 hours a day at 408-244-3402. Phone messages can be left 24 hours a day at 408-244-2455. Emails can be sent to dave@wrestlingobserver.com. Results. June 9th, Mexico City Arena, Mexico. CMLL TV tapings, 2,500. Bengala and Principe Valiente B. Camora and Cholo, Dark Angel and Estrella Magica and Sahori B. Amapola and La Nazi and Seductora, Archangel de la Muerte and Escándalo and Loco Max B. Angel Azteca Jr. and Angel de Oro and Angel de Plata. Felino and Heavy Metal and Lizmark Jr. B. Mascara Dorada and Mictlan and Metro Blue Panther and Shocker and Toscano B. Ultimo Guerrero and Tetsuya Naito and Yujiro. June 10th, Helsinki, WWE Raw. 3,500 Goldust v. William Regal, Women's Title, Maurice B. Kelly, Tag Titles, Carlito and Primo B. Ted DiBiase and Cody Rhodes DQ, U.S. Title, Kofi Kingston b. Matt Hardy, Big Show b. MVP, John Cena b. The Miz, Triple H b. Randy Orton. June 11th, Prague, Czech Republic, WWE Raw. Goldust v. William Regal, Women's Title, Maurice B. Kelly, Tag Titles, Carlito and Primo b. Ted DiBiase and Cody Rhodes DQ, U.S. Title. Kofi Kingston b. Matt Hardy, Big Show b. MVP, John Cena b. The Miz, Triple H b. Randy Orton. June 11th, Osaka Pro Wrestling Noah 1,700 Sellout, Kotaro Suzuki and Genba Hirai b. Atsushi Aoki and Akihiko Ito, Takuma Sano and Ricky Marvin b. Bobby Fish and Masao Inoue, Akitoshi Saito and Kishin Kawabata b. Akira Tao and Masashi Aoyagi, Katsuhiko Nakajima and Kento Miyahara b. Yoshinobu Kanemaru and Taiji Ishimori. Takashi Sugiura b. Shuhei Taniguchi, Kensuke Sasaki and Takeshi Morishima b. Bison Smith and Chris Hero, Takeshi Rikyo and Muhammad Yonebi meet Mitsuharu Misawa and Yoshinari Ogawa, Kena Kobashi and Jun Akiyama b. Kena and Go Shiozaki. June 11th, Mia, New Japan, 1,150 Kota Ibushi and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi b. Nobuo Yoshihashi and Kazuchika Okada, Akira b. Milano Collection AT, Taichi b. Ryusuke Taguchi, Carl Anderson and Tomohiro Ishii and Takashi Iizuka and Toru Yano and Shinsuke Nakamura b. Mitsuhide Hirasawa and Tomoaki Honma and Wataru Inoue and Togi Makabe and Hiroyoshi Tenzan. Yamato b. Koji Kanemoto, Jado b. Tiger Mask, Hiroshi Tanahashi and Haruki Goto and Prince Devitt b. Jushin Liger and Yuji Nagata and Manabu Nakanishi. June 12th, Manassas, Virginia, ROH. 600 Necro Butcher and Colt Cabana and Grizzly Redwood b. Jimmy Rave and Claudio Castagnoli and Ernie Osiris, Sean Spears b. Alex Payne, Brian Danielson b. Kenny King, Kevin Steen and El Generico b. Nick and Matt Jackson, Roderick Strong won 4-way over Austin Aries, D'Lo Brown and Eddie Edwards, Jimmy Jacobs b. Sonia Dutt, Jay Briscoe b. Davey Richards, non-title Tyler Black b. Jerry Lynn. June 12th, Mexico City Arena, Mexico, CMLL TV tapings, 9,500, Pequeno Black Warrior and Pequeno Damian 666 and Pierrotito v. Mascarada Dorada and Pequeno Olimpico and Shockercito, Maximo and Sagrado and Valiente b. Misterioso Jr. and Shigeo Okamura and Virus, Atlantis and Black Warrior and Mr. Niebla b. Blue Panther and La Sombra and Toscano, CMLL Universal Title Tournament, Hector Garza b. Mephisto, Mistico b. Efesto, Ultimo Guerrero b. Volador Jr., Negro Casas b. La Mascara, Mistico b. Hector Garza, Ultimo Guerrero b. Negro Casas, Ultimo Guerrero b. Mistico to win Tournament Block B, Shocker b. Dos Caras Jr. DQ. June 12th, Toyohashi, New Japan, 4,000 Sellout Milano Collection AT and Koji Kanemoto and Tiger Mask b. Nobuo Yoshihashi and Kazuchika Okada and Mitsuhide Hirasawa, Atsushi Aoki b. Jado, Kota Ibushi b. Yamato DQ, Tomohiro Ishii and Takashi Iizuka and Toru Yano and Shinsuke Nakamura b. Tomoaki Honma and Togi Makabe and Wataru Inoue and Hiroyoshi Tenzan, Prince Devitt b. Akira, Jushin Liger b. Tsuyoshi Kikuchi, Hiroshi Tanahashi and Haruki Goto and Ryusuke Taguchi b. Yuji Nagata and Manabu Nakanishi and Taichi. June 13th, Hiroshima, Pro Wrestling Noah Misawa's Passing Away Event, 2,300 Yoshinobu Kanemaru b. Masashi Aoyagi, Katsuhiko Nakajima b. Bobby Fish, Takashi Sugiura and Yoshinari Ogawa and Taiji Ishimori b. Ricky Marvin and Masao Inoue and Takuma Sano, Kotaro Suzuki and Genba Hirai b. Kena and Akihiko Ito, Takeshi Rikyo and Muhammad Yone b. Akira Tao and Yuto Aishima, Yoshihiro Takayama b. Chris Hero, Kena Kobashi and Jun Akiyama and Shuhei Taniguchi b. Kensuke Sasaki and Takeshi Morishima and Kento Miyahara, GHC Tag Titles, Bison Smith and Akitoshi Saito b. Mitsuharu Misawa and Go Shiozaki. June 13th, Nîmes, France, WWE Raw 14,000 Sellout, Goldust b. William Regal Divas Title Maurice b. Kelly, Tag Titles, Carlito and Primo B Ted DiBiase and Cody Rhodes DQ, US title, Kofi Kingston B Matt Hardy, Big Show B MVP, John Cena B The Miz, Triple H B Randy Orton. June 13th Binghamton, WWE SmackDown, 4000, John Morrison B Mike Knox, David Hart Smith and Tyson Kidd B Evan Bourne and Hurricane Helms, Ricky Steamboat B Drew McIntyre, Great Khali B Dolph Ziggler, Melina and Gail Kim and Eve Torres B Natalia and Alicia Fox and Layla. ECW title, Tommy Dreamer B Jack Swagger, CM Punk won 3-way over Rey Mysterio and Jeff Hardy to keep world title. June 13th New York Hammerstein Ballroom, ROH, 1450, Nick and Matt Jackson B Rhett Titus and Kenny King, Necro Butcher B Jimmy Rave, Roderick Strong B Sonya Dutt, Colt Cabana won 4-way over Bryan Danielson, Claudio Castagnoli and D'Lo Brown, tag title submission match. Eddie Edwards and Davey Richards B Kevin Steen and El Generico, Jay Briscoe B Little Guido Maritato Austin Aries won ROH title in 3-way over Jerry Lynn and Tyler Black. June 13th Council Bluffs, Iowa, TNA, 300, Homicide B Eric Young, Awesome Kong B ODB, Abyss B Sheik Abdul Bashir, Daniels B Matt Morgan, Suicide won 3-way over Consequences Creed and Jay Lethal to keep the X title, Robert Roode and James Storm B Kurt Angle and Scott Steiner. June 13th Kyoto, New Japan, 1350, Carl Anderson and Jado and Tomohiro Ishii B Taichi and Kazuchika Okada and Mitsuhide Hirasawa, Hiroyoshi Tenzan and Togi Makabe and Tomoaki Honma and Wataru Inoue B Shinsuke Nakamura and Toru Yano and Yamato and Takashi Iizuka DQ. Hiroshi Tanahashi and Hiroki Goto and Prince Devitt B Yuji Nagata and Manabu Nakanishi and Akira Atsushi Aoki B Milano Collection AT, Black Tiger B Tiger Mask, Kota Ibushi B Jushin Liger, Koji Kanemoto B Ryusuke Taguchi. June 14th Tokyo Korakuen Hall, New Japan Best of the Super Junior Finals, 2005 Sellout Tsuyoshi Kikuchi B Nobuo Yoshihashi, Taichi B Ryusuke Taguchi, Akira and Jushin Liger and Tiger Mask B Jado and Black Tiger and Yamato, Shinsuke Nakamura and Takashi Iizuka and Toru Yano and Carl Anderson and Tomohiro Ishii B Hiroyoshi Tenzan, in Togi Makabe and Milano Collection AT and Wataru Inoue and Tomoaki Honma. Best of the Super Junior Semi-Finals, Koji Kanemoto B Atsushi Aoki, Prince Devitt B Kota Ibushi, Hiroshi Tanahashi and Hiroki Goto and Kazuchika Okada B Yuji Nagata and Manabu Nakanishi and Mitsuhide Hirasawa. Best of Super Junior Finals, Koji Kanemoto B Prince Devitt. June 14th Fukuoka, Pro Wrestling Noah 2600 Sellout, Chris Hero and Genba Hirai Nagi B Masao Inoue and Yuto Aishima, Kotaro Suzuki and Muhammad Yone B Mitsuo Momoda and Nakatoshi Saito, Ricky Marvin and Yoshinari Ogawa B Katsuhiko Nakajima and Kento Miyahara, Yoshinobu Kanemaru and Taiji Ishimori B Kena and Akihiko Ito, Kensuke Sasaki and Takeshi Morishima B Bison Smith and Bobby Fish, Kena Kowashi and Akira Tao and Shuhei Taniguchi B Yoshihiro Takayama and Takashi Sugiura and Takuma Sano, GHC HWT title, Bo Shiozaki B Takeshi Rikio to win vacant title. June 14th Hershey, Pennsylvania, WWE SmackDown, 8000, John Morrison B Mike Knox, Ricky Steamboat B Drew McIntyre, David Hart Smith and Tyson Kidd B Evan Bourne and Hurricane Helms, IC title, Chris Jericho B Rey Mysterio, Great Khali B Dolph Ziggler, ECW title, Tommy Dreamer B Jack Swagger, world title, CM Punk B Jeff Hardy. June 14th Mexico City Arena, Mexico, CMLL TV tapings, 8000, Artillero and Super Commando B Starman and Trueno, Fabian El Hitano and Metallico and Tony Rivera B Bronco and Dr. X and Escandalo, Euphoria and Nosferatu and Vangelis B Flash and Pegaso and Ray Cometa, Hefesto and Heavy Metal and Lizmark Jr. B Blue Panther and Mictlan and Sagrado, Hector Garza and Mistico and Toscano B Averno and El Texano Jr. and Mephisto. June 14th Kearney, Nebraska, TNA, 1000, Eric Young B Consequences Creed, ODB B Awesome Kong, Suicide retained X title over Jay Lethal and Homicide, Daniels B Sheik Abdul Bashir, Matt Morgan B Abyss, Robert Roode and James Storm B Scott Steiner and Kurt Angle. June 15th Kagoshima, Pro Wrestling Noah, 1300, Masao Inoue B Mitsuo Momoda, Taiji Ishimori and Yoshinobu Kanemaru B Kenta and Atsushi Aoki, Yoshinari Ogawa and Takuma Sano B Akira Tao and Genba Hirai Nagi, Takeshi Morishima and Takashi Sugiura B Akatoshi Saito and Yuto Aishima, Bison Smith and Bobby Fish B Kena Kobashi and Kishin Kawabata, Go Shiozaki and Akihiko Ito B Chris Hero and Ricky Marvin, Takeshi Rikyo and Kotaro Suzuki and Muhammad Yonebi Kensuke Sasaki and Katsuhiko Nakajima and Kento Miyahara. June 16, Roanoke, WWE SmackDown/ECW TV tapings, David Hart Smith b. Christian, Mark Henry b. Evan Bourne non-titled, Jack Swagger b. Tommy Dreamer, Jeff Hardy b. Chris Jericho Core, Great Khali b. Dolph Ziggler DQ Alina b. Alicia Fox, Edge b. John Morrison, Crime Time and Or Truth b. Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin and Ricky Ortiz, CM Punk b. Rey Mysterio, Cage Match, Mysterio and Jeff Hardy b. Edge and Chris Jericho. June 16, Kumamoto, Pro Wrestling Noah, 2,400 Sellout, Yoshinobu Kanemaru and Ricky Marvin b. Kotaro Suzuki and Genba Hiranagi, Takuma Sano b. Mitsuo Momota, Takeshi Morishima and Takashi Sugiura b. Akira Tao and Kishin Kawabata, Yoshinari Ogawa and Taiji Ishimori b. Kenta and Masao Inoue, Takeshi Rikyo and Muhammad Yone b. Akatoshi Saito and Yuto Aishima, Bison Smith and Chris Hero and Bobby Fish b. Kensuke Sasaki and Katsuhiko Nakajima and Kento Miyahara, Go Shiozaki and Atsushi Aoki b. Kena Kobashi and Akihiko Ito. June 17, Tokyo Korakuen Hall, Real Japan Pro Wrestling, 1756, Grand Hamada and Minoru and Sammy Lee Jr. b. Masao Orihara and Tiger Shark and Black Shadow, Alexander Otsuka b. Munenori Sawa, Yuki Ishikawa and Mitsuya Nagai b. Minoru Suzuki and Super Tiger, Original Tiger Mask and Ultimo Dragon and Riki Chashu b. Daisuke Sekimoto and Masahiro Chono and Great Sasuke. Special thanks to Daniel Ahim, Brian Alvarez, Chris Arias, Daniel Carlson, Michael Carpenter, Mark Kolb, Devin Cutting, Jose Gonzalez, Manuel Gonzalez, Tim Grief, Stephen Gray, Ken Hamblin, Ian Hamilton, Pavel Jirku, Dustin Jones, Mike Kuzmuk, Alex Merves, John Massey, Michael Meyer, Douglas Nunnally, Corey Olson, Antonio Payne, Mark Schreiner, Justin Shapiro, James Stanios, Jeremy Warneck, Scott Witt, Ron Whitworth, Chris Yannick, Chris Elner. CMLL. A correction from last week. Princesa Blanca had beaten Marcela in January for the Mexican national women's title, so Marcela was not champion when she went down last week with knee surgery. Cesar Valentino, who wrestled from the 60s to the 80s and I recall him working California in the early 70s, passed away on June 15 at the age of 68. He started his career in 1958 in his hometown of Veracruz as a teenager. He worked as a national star from 1962 to 1975 for CMLL. His biggest run came in the late 70s for the UWA. He was the company's first World Junior Light Heavyweight Champion, beating Anibal on November 20, 1977, to win the tournament. He held the belt until losing to Gran Hamada on February 4, 1979 in Mexico City. He feuded on top with the likes of Canek, El Solitario and Villano Trace in the glory days of the promotion. In the 80s, Valentino got the job as booker for a promotion run by Televisa and Don Fraser, who was the boxing promoter at the Forum in Los Angeles during the 70s and 80s when boxing from the Forum was nationally syndicated. They ran a big show at Estadio Azteca, which holds 120,000 fans, on August 12, 1983, but I doubt it drew well since nobody remembers the show. Valentino beat Tully Blanchard in one of the main events. He continued his career in both Mexico and Guatemala until retiring in 1993. The major show on June 12 drew 9,500 with kids almost free, 8 cents. That was disappointing because it wasn't much larger than the prior week at regular prices, and it was week 2 of the Universal Title Tournament. The show also included a 6:30 p.m. airing on the big screens of Atlantis' new movie aimed at kids. In the tournament matches, Hector Garza, CMLL Trios champion, pinned Mephisto, NWA welterweight champion, in 7-11 with a backdrop. Místico, Mexican national light heavyweight champion, pinned Defesto, CMLL light heavyweight champion, in 3:59. Ultimo Guerrero, CMLL heavyweight champion, pinned Volador Jr., CMLL tag team champion, with a power bomb off the middle ropes. Then, in an awesome 2:23, Negro Casas, CMLL welterweight champion, pinned La Mascara, CMLL Trios champion. The semifinals saw Místico beat Garza via submission with La Mística in 3:39 in a good match. Ultimo Guerrero pinned Casas in 3:23 with a brainbuster off the top rope in another good match. The final saw Guerrero pin Místico in 4:38 after a Goria special. Both wrestlers fought technical style after a reverse superplex off the top rope. Even though Místico is the face, Guerrero pinning him got a huge pop. Excellent short match. Místico did a stretcher job. A lot of fans were shocked to see them beat Místico clean on Kids Day. So the final on June 19th is Guerrero against the June 5th tournament winner, El Texano Jr., in a battle of heels. The main event after the tournament saw Shocker beat Dos Caras Jr. via DQ. First fall saw Caras Jr. sell like he'd been kicked low, he hadn't, and ref El Maya thought he saw Shocker's leg near the groin, so called for the DQ. Second fall saw Shocker win with an arm bar. Third fall saw Shocker fake like Caras Jr. had fouled him, which he hadn't, and Maya called for the DQ, so it was like revenge. Crowd in the third fall was cheering Caras Jr., who just turned heel, which upset Shocker. Toscano returned from an injury this past week. Big show of the week on June 19th, besides the Universal title final, as Místico and Garza and Volador Jr. vs. Casas and Mr. Niebla and Felino. AAA. Next TV taping is June 20th in Orizaba with Macias vs. Dr. Wagner Jr. in a non-title rematch, and Latin Lover and Marco Corleone, and La Parca vs. Electroshock and Chessman and Oriental, plus Jack Evans vs. Teddy Hart. Puerto Rico. Shane the Glamour Boy, Shane Sewell, won a battle royal on June 14th in Yoko to get a Puerto Rican title shot at Idol Stevens on the July 11th Aniversario show in Bayamon. With Miguel Cotto fighting on June 13th, they didn't run on Saturday and the usual big show was moved to Sunday. Steve Corino beat Shane to keep the Universal title when Stevens shoved Shane off the top rope as he was about to deliver his finishing elbow drop. Main event was Thunder and Lightning over La Pesadilla and Stevens in a tag title match via DQ when Mr. Mac interfered. Hustle. The next show is July 5th in Fukuoka with a 5 vs. 5 Monster Gun vs. Hustle Gun main event. The Hustle Gun team was announced as Tajiri and Magnum Tokyo and Genichiro Tenryu and Shiro Koshinaka and Bono Kan. The opposing team hasn't been announced yet. Dragon Gate. Naruki Doi and Masato Yoshino will be on the September 6th show in Chicago. Dragon Gate USA is also working with AW in Berwyn, Illinois and Hybrid Wrestling for wrestlers who will work pre-show matches. The June 11th show at Korakuen Hall was headlined by Naruki Doi beating Masato Yoshino in 28-11 to retain the Open the Dream Gate title. Doi's next title match will be on July 19th in Kobe, which is the company's biggest show of the year. Gamma and Chima beat Open the Twin Gate champs Ryo Saito and Genki Horiguchi in a non-title match when Gamma pinned Saito with La Magistral to set up a June 26th title match in Osaka. June 21st in Fukuoka has an Open the Brave Gate title match and a no-rope match with Chima vs. Kenichiro Arai. Pro Wrestling Noah. Kenta Kobashi and Jun Akiyama formed a tag team on the June 11th show in Osaka, which drew a sellout 1,700 as they beat Kenta and Go Shiozaki in 22-41 when Kobashi pinned Kenta after a lariat. Kensuke Sasaki and Takeshi Morishima are using the Road Warriors Doomsday device, known in Japan as the Double Impact, as their finisher now that they are working as a regular team. New Japan. They are scheduled to announce the G1 Climax Series members and brackets on July 5th at Korakuen Hall. They have a big show on June 20th at Osaka Furitsu Gym with Manabu Nakanishi defending the IWGP title against Hiroshi Tanahashi, Togi Makabe vs. Toru Yano in a singles match after the breakup of their longtime team, Takashi Sugiura vs. Hiroki Goto, that will probably be a great match. Team 3D defends the IWGP tag titles against Giant Bernard and Carl Anderson, Go Shiozaki vs. Kazuchika Okada, Yuji Nagata and Hiroyoshi Tenzan, and Wataru Inoue and Tomoaki Honma vs. Shinsuke Nakamura and Takashi Iizuka and Tomohiro Ishii and Jado, Tiger Mask vs. Black Tiger in a mask vs. mask match, Ryusuke Taguchi and Prince Devitt vs. Milano Collection AT and Taichi, Takawa Mori and Yutaka Yoshi vs. Super Strong Machine and Mitsuhide Hirasawa, and Koji Kanemoto and Nobuo Yoshihashi vs. Jushin Liger and Akira. Other Japan notes. Ted Tanabe, real name Tetsuo Tanabe, a well-known Japanese independent referee, passed away on June 15th in an Osaka hospital at the age of 46. He was working for Osaka Pro Wrestling the night before and collapsed in the middle of the main event with Billy Ken Kid and Pero vs. Orochi and Tadasu, suffering a heart attack. They attempted to revive him in the ring, eerily like what happened the night before with Mitsuharu Misawa. He was rushed to the hospital, where he went into a coma and passed away the next afternoon at 12:23 p.m. from heart failure. Tanabe, who was terribly overweight, was the fixture referee for Lucha Libre promotions in Japan, like Michinoku Pro and Osaka Pro, dating back to 1990, as well as numerous other independent groups. He would note as his claim to fame that he believed he refereed for more different promotions than any referee in the history of Japanese wrestling, which was a testament to how universally well-liked he was, since he'd regularly work for different groups that were warring with each other. He was always heavy, said to be 5'5" and 245 pounds, although he may have been heavier and most of the weight was in the belly. He had always been heavy, but had put a lot of weight in recent years. During the heyday of Michinoku Pro in the mid-90s, he was the company's referee, who would do comedy spots with the wrestlers during the matches. Most notably, every trios match would include the skipping spot, and he'd skip with the wrestlers. He also did a gig as a heel referee for Osaka Pro a few years back. Even though Noah didn't cancel any shows when Misawa passed away, Osaka Pro canceled a few dates and will return on June 19th for a show where they will have a ceremony honoring Tanabe. They had another Legends match on the June 14th tradition show, this time bringing the match to Osaka, where they drew 1,100 fans as Tatsumi Fujinami and Riki Choshu and the original Tiger Mask beat Gran Hamada and Ultimo Dragon and Hiro Saito in 10:57, when Choshu pinned Hamada after a lariat. Real Japan also did a match of that type on June 17th at Korakuen Hall, drawing 1,756 as original Tiger Mask and Choshu and Dragon beat Great Sasuke and Masahiro Chono, who hasn't been on the recent New Japan shows, and Daisuke Sekimoto, who most likely handled the bulk of the work, in 1402 when Tiger pinned Sasuke after a Japanese rolling crotch hold. Bill Eadie, who is in his early 60s, returns to Japan as the Masked Superstar for the first time in more than 20 years. He was a New Japan regular during the 80s, is doing a July 4th indie show in Tokyo teaming with New Japan's Super Strong Machine against Tiger Mask and Mr. Cacao. Here and there. Judge W. Douglas Baird of Pinellas Pasco County Circuit Court ruled on June 10 that the media will only be able to access depositions in the Graziano family lawsuit against the Baglia family that are required to be filed with the court. So some of the stuff will be released publicly and some will be confidential. It was a compromise between local media and the Baglia side, which wanted everything confidential. Baird ruled the media could not sit in on depositions. George Tragos, the attorney who represents John Graziano, argued against confidentiality, saying it would delay the case, which is scheduled to go to trial in March. Tragos argued that Hulk Hogan's attempt at confidentiality and keeping the case out of the media was disingenuous, since Hogan has repeatedly talked about the case on local radio. Tragos said that Hogan can now go to the media and make up stories that they should be able to contradict, but they wouldn't be allowed to do so. Hogan calls into Bubba the Love Sponge several times per week, usually joining Bubba in tearing down his ex-wife, along with plugging his daughter's VH1 television show and upcoming album. WFLA-TV in Tampa and the Tampa Tribune argued all the documents should be made public because the Baglia family has generated so much publicity on their own and feel that by doing so, they shouldn't be allowed to turn around now and try to curtail publicity. They noted Hulk repeatedly has gone on Bubba the Love Sponge and discussed the case as well as his divorce. The argument was that if Hogan didn't want the case tried in public and wanted things kept quiet, he was doing a bad job on doing so himself by going on Bubba 10 times. Baird also ruled against the Graziano family for being able to have access of all the tapes of the phone conversations with Nick Baglia and his family members while he was in jail. Baird said the issue was too broad. I've got some real issues with scope here. This is fishing. There may be some fish in there, maybe not. I don't know. Tragos said Hogan signed a confidentiality agreement in October not to disclose anything about settlement talks, and then violated it and claimed he inaccurately portrayed the money discussed by saying he offered John Graziano money for a 5-star hotel for the rest of his life. Linda Baglia has claimed that Bubba the Love Sponge has been encouraging his listeners to send her email death threats to her MySpace account. Bubba brags on air that he has a cult-like following and has instructed listeners to verbally attack Linda if they see her in public, and they have, said Gary Smith, her PR rep. Linda has suffered too many disturbing attacks and acts of vandalism to her personal property by these cult followers. The release also said Linda is considered joining in a lawsuit filed by Todd Schnitt, a rival morning personality in the Tampa market, where Schnitt claimed Bubba incited his fans to act against him and his wife. The release said that Bubba and Hulk have leaked both her cell phone and home phone numbers of Linda and her parents to fans, who have been calling up and leaving threatening messages. A divorce hearing between Hulk and Linda on June 15 got really ugly as Hulk attempted to get the court to lower his monthly alimony payment to her, which is now $40,000 per month. Hulk's lawyer claimed that Linda is squandering the money to buy drugs and clothes for boyfriend Charlie Hill. Hulk's key witness was Linda's former hairdresser Tracy Morgan, who said she had cashed checks for Linda when Linda told her she needed some cash to buy prescription pills. She was actually buying drugs with the money, Morgan said. She told me that. Morgan, who said she's known the family for about a decade, said she had seen Linda with both pot and pills in her possession, and that Linda brought and served alcohol to minors, and let them do drugs in her house at a party the night Nick Ballia was released from jail. They also brought in a truck driver, James Flynn, who said he saw Linda doing what he believed was cocaine over Memorial Day weekend. Linda's attorney, Ray Fool, said Morgan's story was a complete fabrication and said the checks used as evidence were advance payment for her salon services because she felt sorry for Morgan, who claimed she was in a financial bind. Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee are working their nearly 35-year feud on Memphis TV of late. The angle claims they have wrestled 400 times in their careers and they are both tied for wins. Dundee has claimed he's won 199 times, so he's ahead. At first that sounds like he's weak at math, but there were probably plenty of draws, even though clearly they are making up numbers like they were Hickson Gracie fans. Jimmy Hart on TV said that both men have won 400 times and it's a tie. They had a TV match that wasn't good, with Dundee DQ'd when the ref saw him with a chain, so I guess Lawler now has the lead. In the John Tolos story, the FCC cracking down on pro wrestling during the 70s was a huge behind-the-scenes issue at the time. Irv Mushnick noted that when looking at the files of his uncle Sam Mushnick, that it was a major issue throughout the industry. Walton noted there was a lot of heat on the Hollywood office from the other promotions because it was a fan from their territory who complained and caused heat on all the major promoters to have to tone down the hard selling of arena matches. In his upcoming book on wrestling, Larry Matusik noted that since this was before the days of cable, the FCC only allowed a certain number of commercial minutes, as noted, and it had to be logged separately, and unregulated cable didn't exist. He noted that the guidelines St. Louis, and likely all of the promotions went by, was the date of the show couldn't be mentioned except during the clearly defined few minutes of commercial time. Matusik noted he could, during the body of the show, sneak in discussion of an upcoming match, but it had to be subtle and appear to be just natural discussion stemming from what was going on in the ring, and the plug had to be subliminal, without mentioning the day of the week, the date of the show, or the arena the match was taking place in. They were limited to saying, by this time next week the title could belong to, or in just 6 days, the long-awaited collision between these two superstars will finally happen. Guys could cut promos on the guy they were programmed with as long as the date of the bout and the arena were not mentioned, although it did sometimes sneak in. In 1983, new FCC Chairman Mark Fowler in the Reagan administration eliminated all limits on commercialization of the airwaves, leading to the rise of infomercials. While the initial result was removing those restrictions from wrestling promoters, in the long run they hurt more than they helped because when stations were able to sell infomercial time, they stopped caring about ratings when they could make money in other ways, and it hurt the leverage of the local wrestling promotion that often delivered good ratings. The next year, when Vince McMahon started buying time in the major markets, that became a double whammy for regional wrestling around the country as they suddenly had to pay for time or lose their TV in many markets. The Tolos funeral took place on June 4th at an Orthodox Greek church in the Los Angeles area. There were only 35 to 40 people at the service, which shocked the few who attended, who figured there would be a large gathering. The priest who gave the eulogy talked more about his personal life and little about wrestling in a 45-minute speech, and pronounced his last name Talise. Nobody from the current business attended. There was talk about how there was no mention of him on WWE television, although I wouldn't have expected that as the company's policy has been to cut way back on any mentions of deaths because of the stigma of wrestlers dying, even though a star dying at 78 is hardly a black mark on the industry. There were people who noted that nobody from the current business there were not many there from wrestling, limited to Jeff Walton, the publicist for the wrestling office during the 70s, Mondo Guerrero, Rock Riddle, a former tag team partner, Dan Westbrook, a photographer whose work appeared in Japanese newspapers and magazines working for UPI when they'd have all that mainstream coverage of the Olympic Auditorium big shows in the 60s and early 70s, Mike Lano, who ran his fan club, Mark Dawson, VP of the Tolos fan club in the 70s and son of actor/game show host Richard Dawson, and Billy Colzer, who wrestled as Billy Rogers in prelims when Tolos was on top, and longtime area fans Eric Caden and Dan Farron. People expressed being surprised that so few from the Southern California wrestling community were there, most notably no Mike LaBelle or Gene LaBelle. Tolos was buried at the Oakwood Memorial Cemetery in West Valley, California. Only about 20 came to the grave site. Some more Tolos notes. In the title section, we got a report that the loss listed on July 14, 1972, at the Olympic to Black Gordman was a deal where the title was held up, not that Gordman won the title. Tolos then won the vacant title in the rematch 2 weeks later, in the March 10, 1972, match where Tolos beat Kowalski for the America's title, and he said he was facing him for revenge for Blassie. Blassie showed up on crutches and hit Tolos with them, which led to the win. In the rematch with Kowalski, where Blassie wasn't at ringside, Chris Tolos debuted to help John retain the title. In the Ernie Ladd vs. Victor Rivera match where Rivera won when Tolos interfered after the injury from all the thumb to the throat, Tolos came down to the ring under a mask and didn't unmask until after Rivera had scored the pin. The Tolos vs. Ladd grudge match saw Tolos load his knee pad with a foreign object and give Ladd several knee drops. Revenge for the throat injury a few months earlier in Ladd's blow-off in the territory. In late 1971, Tolos may have done the angle that Ric Flair later popularized regarding being all dressed up while doing a promo and having all your clothes torn off and being left yelling and screaming in your underwear. In his case, it was part of his first Los Angeles face turn transition, as it was Kenji Shibuya and Masa Saito who did the attack. This led to Tolos, who had no allies in Los Angeles since he'd been such a strong heel and just turned, bringing in Giant Baba as his mystery tag team partner to beat Shibuya and Saito. On Francine Fournier's Legends of the Arena show on June 27, they sold out the front row, which doesn't sound that impressive, except that they were charging $250 a ticket. Hulk Hogan's new autobiography, largely based on the past few years after being out of wrestling and Nick's accident and his divorce, will be out on October 27. His first may have been the biggest work of fiction of any pro wrestling autobiography to date. Don't know how accurate this is, but on June 6 in Boonton, New Jersey, Mercedes Martinez and Angel Orsini did an Iron Woman match, which ended with no falls taken in 60 minutes, and then did a 10-minute sudden death, making it a total 70-minute match. It was claimed it was the first one-hour women's match in the US. There have been women's one-hour draws in Japan, although not a lot of them. I can't come up with a one-hour women's match in the US, but one would think it would have happened, although 70 minutes I wouldn't be sure of. There was a famous match in 1954 with Mildred Burke and June Byers in Atlanta that went 47 minutes, where Byers beat Burke for the most recognized version of the women's world title, before the commission called it off because it had become a stalemate since the match ended up being a complete shoot. Burke injured her knee, but was good enough on defense that Byers couldn't beat her for a second fall. In last week's issue about the Gulf Coast Nostalgia Show, the event was at the Dothan, Alabama Civic Center, not the Houston Farm Center as reported. Shaver Hansen finished the season when Baylor was eliminated in the NCAA baseball tournament on May 31 by the University of Minnesota. Hansen, son of Stan, a shortstop, broke Baylor's all-time home run record for a single season with 17, leading the Big 12 Conference, and hit .330. He was a sixth-round pick on June 10 by the Seattle Mariners in the college baseball draft. What could make for an interesting career path is him playing in the Japanese league, since his mother is Japanese and he lived in Japan for 2 years while growing up. Plus, the son of Stan Hansen, arguably the most popular American wrestler ever to compete in Japan, if he was good enough to start as a major league player, would be kind of an attraction. The story of the younger Hansen being drafted to the same team that Ichiro Suzuki is on was actually the lead story on the front page of Tokyo Sports on June 12. It was not covered anywhere near as strong in other Japanese media outlets, but it was covered as a sports story in a lot of places. Hansen is much smaller than his father, who wrestled much of his career at around the 300-pound mark, as he's 6'0" and 185 pounds. Paul Butcher Vachon, 71, underwent reconstructive jaw surgery on June 9 in Sherbrooke, PA. In the operation, doctors removed his jaw, that was destroyed by radiation treatments for cancer, and replaced it with bone removed from his shoulder. ROH. Sean Spears will be appearing on the July 17 and July 18 tapings, which are the next set after the ones this weekend. TNA. There are a lot of talks regarding Sting and his retirement, which there have been every year since he came back. Bound for Glory is being targeted as an idea of where they may do his retirement. Sting is 50 and every year he says it's his last year. Every year Dixie Carter gives him a good deal and talks him into signing for another year. There is an internal belief that in the end, the same thing will happen this year, and it's noted that the new TV schedule, which means he's doing 4 days, all in a row, once a month, as he doesn't do any house shows or foreign tours, but at north of $500,000 per year, guaranteed that he'll always be on top, and probably have time off at least once a year to do an angle, that you turn it down. As noted last week, his week Garrett will be playing college football in the fall as Azusa Pacific, which is a NIA school in Southern California. One of my best friends growing up played on their national championship volleyball team in the 80s and was NIA MVP I'm thinking around 1985. But the games are Saturday and his limited wrestling schedule wouldn't mean he would miss any games. Even though Hernandez thought he would be out as long as 9 months after neck surgery, he was actually just cleared to return. Regarding reports on Cibernetico and Mystico being talked with, as reported in Superluchas, Hector Guerrero has been talking with CMLL as the original plan was for the 2009 World X Cup to be based in Arena, Mexico. That was agreed on last year, but you know how things change, and CMLL hasn't been using TNA talent on its big shows like it did a year ago. No word on where that stands. TNA has always wanted Mystico, but CMLL would never let them have him, saying he was booked solid with no free days months in advance. Cibernetico is a big question mark as to why they would even consider him. He's one of the most charismatic wrestlers around, but that's because of his mic work, and he doesn't speak English. Plus, they aren't going to bring him in and give him time on the mic to get over. He's got a great look, but in TNA that means very little as far as getting over, since they really can't get new people over, and you either have to be a fantastic talker or a star from the 90s in North America. Frank Trigg, in an article in Slam Wrestling, said he had been in talks with TNA about returning, but that his new UFC contract, a 4-fight deal, eliminates that possibility. UFC will not allow its contracted fighters to do pro wrestling. He talked about wanting to be a full-time pro wrestler after he retires from MMA. Based on what I've heard, even though he got rave reviews for his mic work in TNA, they pretty much soured on him after he turned down appearing at a taping because he said he had other commitments, and TNA pretty much lost interest at that point. Lisa Varone wrote in her MySpace account, "A few people have asked me why I chose to go to TNA. Not nearly as many as have suggested that I go to TNA over the past couple years, but it has been asked. Before I can answer that, I have to address why I left WWE. I left because I didn't enjoy my role, and I didn't see it changing. That, in addition to the brutal travel schedule, made it an easy choice for me to walk away and have the opportunity available to one of the scores of female wrestlers who were anxiously awaiting their chance. TNA approached me with the offer to come to their organization, work a less rigorous schedule, and more importantly, wrestle to the best of my ability, with no limitations. Several people have debated whether this will affect my chance one day being elected into the WWE Hall of Fame. I am flattered at my name even being mentioned with such an honor. And whether or not you believe that I am worthy, I really don't think that WWE will hold it against me for doing other things after I left. I truly believe that I gave 100% every day with WWE, and that I went above and beyond what was expected of me. I think that if I am happy with my choices, then they are happy for me. Of course, they took me off their website. They can't promote talent with another organization. But again, I'd like to think that on a personal level, they are happy for me. She said she still wants to train for MMA in addition to wrestling for TNA, and TNA is allowing her to do so. They will be doing another 30-minute live pregame show before the pay-per-view on June 21st. Tentatively it'll be Doug Williams and Brutus Magnus versus Eric Young and Rhino, but that's not official yet. Bobby Lashley signed an endorsement deal with Changing Times Vitamins to be a spokesperson for their Recoverix sports drink, become a distributor for the drink. The company would also develop a Bobby Lashley line of supplements for health food stores and gyms. Lashley is expected to start talks with TNA about returning after his June 27th fight. The deal with Shane Douglas and the Farmer's Tan, so to speak, he was on TV and his forearms were tan and his upper arms were pasty white while working in a t-shirt, is that he had personal issues at home that forced him to rush back after the May 25th tapings, where he shot the angle, to go back to Pittsburgh on May 26th. He then had to fly back from Pittsburgh to Orlando for the match with Daniels, and was to arrive at 3 p.m., which may have given him time to get a spray-on tan. Because of weather problems, he actually didn't arrive in Orlando until close to 8 p.m., and got to the arena less than 10 minutes before he had to go in the ring for the singles match with Styles that aired this week.